last Thursday, the Courage to Come Back Awards Gala was held at the Vancouver Convention Centre, Canada Place, and Andy Fiore was there to accept his award in the mental health category. Andy's a local filmmaker who lives in Vancouver's downtown east side, and he's joined us today in studio. Hi, Andy.
Hi, Dan. Thanks for inviting me.
Thanks for coming down. Now, I've heard that the awards gala was a huge success, a total sellout. It must have been quite an amazing night.
It was, Dan. I believe they told us that there were over 1,000 people there. And we tried to figure out how many tables is that. So there were 100 tables in this vast room. And they had cranes that were the size of half of this room just to bring in the opening shot when you watch it. And then the exciting thing is this is the first year that Coast Mental Health live streamed the whole event. So if you're in front of your computer right now, Google Courage to Come Back Awards live stream. And the first link that comes up, click on it, and you'll see the channel. You can watch the whole thing. My story begins at 51 minutes in.
Wow, that's amazing.
It is. I can share it with the world. And the thing is that I ended up crying because I was overwhelmed by emotions, and that's going to be on there forever.
Wow, that's something that obviously you'll never forget. That's
No.
Now, I was reading that you were, when you received this award or were told about it, it came as a surprise to you. Is that a normal response for this? I would imagine it's something that a person's not expecting.
No, well, what happened with this was that I was nominated by an employee of Vancouver Coastal Health. She, Amanda Shell is her name, and she won the award in 2011 in the mental health category. And the way it worked was back in 2011, I was working on a documentary called Understanding the Broken Mind, Recovery from Schizophrenia. And in the film, I feature 3 people who are high-functioning schizophrenics, and one of them happened to be Amanda. And so we were on the...
Interesting.
It was interesting. We were on the same page. We both wanted to eradicate the stigma with mental illness. We kept in touch throughout the years. And then next thing you know, this year she nominated me. And so it was really exciting. I had no clue. And then I found out 2 weeks later that they actually chose me. And the process is something like they have it has to be 80 unanimous votes for you to win.
Is that right?
Yeah, it's quite a process, they were saying.
So that was reciprocal, actually, on her part.
Exactly.
And you did the documentary film as well.
That's right.
That's pretty interesting. Andy, you've had a very challenging childhood, enduring abuse growing up, but something else was happening to you as well. Now, you started to hear voices and see strange visions. What I'm getting to here is how this disease of the mind develops in a person. I'm speaking specifically of schizophrenia and how it developed in you. Can you expand on this a little bit as you were experiencing this growing up?
Sure. So when I was growing up, some of the hallucinations and delusions that I had were, my brother and I shared the same bedroom. So there was a street level window in our bedroom, and I would often wake up seeing lights flashing, and I would hear sounds that I couldn't put my finger on. And my brother, I would be saying, "Joe, did you hear that? Or did you see that?" And so when I was young, I thought that these were just my active imagination. I thought I was just hearing and seeing things that were part of my imagination. The other thing too was my mother would do psychic readings on the phone, and I would listen to her telling people what their dreams meant. So when I would hear my voices, I thought that was the gift being passed on to me, that I would be one day psychic.
I see. Okay.
You see? So I created a justification for why I was hearing the voices. But and then, going to university, I had one major hallucination that freaked me out, and still didn't quite understand what was going on.
Are you speaking about when you attended Ryerson in Toronto?
That's right. And I saw that golden tower. I was in traffic. I put put my bike on its kickstand because I wanted to ask the guy in front of me, do you see that building? Because I took this route every day and I knew the road well. So there was no building there, but I did see this gold tower. And again, I said, you know what? I couldn't verify. And even to this day, my girlfriend, God bless her, if it wasn't for her, I would not be here talking to you. When I hear or see things, she verifies for me. I say, Sue, did you hear that?
Okay, I see. So you're still experiencing this
it's less. It's less,
problem,
but it remains. And the other thing we've learned too, and if you have a partner that can support you, over the course of being together, she realized that in the summer I get more aggressive and I have more psychotic episodes, and it's because we talked to the doctor about it, and he said, well, in the summer you're probably sweating more, and so as a result of sweating profusely, the medication leaves your body, and so in the summers I take a higher dose. Instead of 600 milligrams, I'll go to 700 just to make sure I'm still stable.
Well, that's interesting.
And these are all things that you learn with experience. They don't just happen overnight, right? So it's quite a struggle.
And it's, of course, a personal thing, too, from one person to another. I was wanting you to expand a little bit on this radio TV arts program you took. Now, you were interested in film. You wanted to be a filmmaker. You wanted to produce films. That was your interest, correct?
Absolutely, yeah.
So you went to Ryerson in Toronto, and you took the course. And somewhere in there, now you made a trip to Korea to teach English. How does that fit into what you were doing at that time? That was while you were in Toronto, correct?
That's right. So after I graduated from Ryerson in 1990. And right after graduation, I started teaching children how to do animation programs at Seneca. Unfortunately, I couldn't get a job in the industry right away. So I did sort of my own thing. I did independent productions, corporate videos, public service, documentary. And then in 99, I wanted a break from all that. So I decided to go to Korea to teach English because I wanted to work with kids again. So
it was you wanted to take a break.
A break from film,
right? Okay.
And so I go over to Korea. I got a job there. It was for a year contract, and they put me up in a apartment with another guy from Alaska. We were teachers together. But when I got there, they give you 2 weeks to relocate. I began to break down mentally. I thought that people were following me. I thought that the people that were following me were trying to kill me. I would hear,
oh my God.
I would hear voices that weren't really there. I would see things that didn't exist, and I was having a tough time trying to participate in the school, teaching the kids.
Of course.
So I had to come back. I couldn't
You
work.
couldn't cope. So it was this overwhelming feeling of paranoia, really. That's
beyond overwhelmed. Like it's just. When I got to the airport back in Toronto, I thought I couldn't pick up my luggage because I thought there were bombs in it. I thought they were going to... When my father came to collect me from the airport, I thought he was going to kill me. So I ran away from my own father. So just to give you an idea of how intense it was. And then when we got back to his place, I thought that there were people outside coming to get me because I screwed up. So all these delusions that didn't exist, all these hallucinations were just pushing me more and more towards that edge.
I see. Now, okay, somewhere in here, did you seek help? Did you see a doctor? Of course, obviously you were aware something was going on, and it became, as you're saying, very intense. Was there medication that was prescribed? Did you get on something to stabilize?
So the first thing we did, we went to the doctor because my dad said, what's wrong? Did someone drug you? And we went to the doctor at the Carlisle Medical Health Centre in Ontario. They did some tests, and they just told me I have schizophrenia. And so they put me on a drug called olanzapine Zyprexa. I took it for 30 days, very expensive medication. After 30 days, all the paranoid thoughts and all the problems I had lifted, and I was like, whoa, wow, I feel better. This is...
normal.
I felt normal.
Right,
and so naturally I thought, you know what? I don't need this stuff anymore. That's what I did. I threw away the meds. And so my dad said, well, what are you going to do now? So I tried to get a job. I went out, struck out into the world again, got an apartment, a job, started getting it. And before I knew it, I was self-medicating with heroin, snorting it at first. But then a year later, I lost my job, lost my girlfriend, all these bad things happened. And instead of the drug use diminishing, it escalated. So I went from snorting heroin to now injecting it. Not knowing that heroin, of course, is a central nervous depressant. So it it was like taking the volume button and bringing it down to 1, as opposed to being on 11.
Okay.
So now all the stress levels were low, and I could cope. To me, it felt like heroin was my medicine. And it took until 2005 to finally be hospitalized and meet a doctor that understood I was also depressed and that I should have been on Seroquel instead of olanzapine and a higher dose.
Okay, so you were prescribed with the wrong medication.
Yeah, sometimes it takes a while to get the right meds. So that was one of the things.
So that was corrected.
Mm-hmm.
You got on the correct medicine. And how did that affect your? Now we're just going to break for a station ID here. We are talking here with Andy Fiore, local filmmaker, about his. He was diagnosed with schizophrenia and how he dealt with it. Now, this is for all our listeners out there. Anyone out there who may be experiencing similar things. This is why we have people like Andy on, so they can relate their own personal experience. You're listening to Co-op Radio, a 100.5 FM. We are CFRO in Vancouver. Glad to have you on board today. This is Soapbox Radio, and we cover local experiences from people who live here in the downtown east side and in the province of British Columbia. And Andy, now you came out to Vancouver at some point here too. So what was the sequence of events that led you to come out west?
So, as I was saying, I lost my job, and then I went from snorting to injecting the heroin. And at the same time, in order to keep myself in the drug, I had to commit property crimes. So within a period of about 6 months, 8 months, I racked up about 5 property charges. And each time I got a charge, I'd go up against go into the mental health courtroom, and they would grant me bail. So I had 5 bails. And on the 6th one, things changed because my dad had decided that he paid $5,000 to bail me out in total. He felt one day, to be on this bail program with him, I had to comply and have him be my escort. So on one occasion, I was missing for lunch, and he panicked. So he went to the court and revoked my bail. The minute he revoked my bail, I found out. My mom said, "Hey, he revoked your bail, and the police are looking for you." So the first thing I did was jump on a bus and come out here. And I had 5 warrants out for my arrest. I came out here, and instead of things getting better, they got worse because it was easier to find heroin now. And of course,
you're speaking about being here in the downtown east side. Yeah,
exactly.
Okay.
And I lived in an SRO, and pretty quick I got to see what it was like out here.
Wow. So your addiction problems continued when you came out here, and in fact got worse. Now, you mentioned briefly about somebody that came into your life that influenced you in a positive way, or at least helped you to recognize where you were at and what potential you had. And if maybe you could tell us a little bit about that now.
Yeah, so when I first got here, I was still committing property crimes, in and out of jail, and I realized I knew that this was only because of my addiction to heroin. So I made a commitment. I said, you know what, I'm going to get off this stuff. I want to get on methadone. So I got onto methadone, and suddenly I wasn't running around stealing laptops, trying to meet my dealer to get drugs. Suddenly I had a whole day to do nothing, just sitting there. I bought a computer. I started to participate in social media, and I started to get interested again in connecting with people. Before I knew it, I was on a dating website called Plenty of Fish. Dating website. And I was out there with, I was out there with my profile. It didn't take long. And then I met Sue. And Sue Patura has been my rock since the moment I met her. I didn't hide a thing. I showed her my room where I lived. I said, this is it, and I've got mental illness, and I'm probably going to have to take medication for the rest of my life. And it did not scare her away. And I knew, hey, I got to keep her.
That's a good starting point.
Exactly. I've got to keep her here. She's not scared.
Yeah.
So, and then it just, again, support is really integral in recovery for most people, and for me.
Yeah. Now, in her case, she was living in the downtown east side?
No, Sue had nothing to do with the downtown east side.
Okay.
She was here from Sudbury, Ontario, and she was visiting with friends. So the fact that we met was just completely a miracle. She was actually going to go back to Sudbury, but then when we met, she decided to stay here. And before long, we were cohabitating. So it really worked out.
Yeah, that's sometimes the best things in life happen by accident.
Exactly.
Isn't it the truth? Now, what you're doing is you're trying to change the perceptions about the mentally ill. Also, those people dealing with addictions. Now, Jagrat Brar spoke about his experiences here in the downtown east side in coming face to face with people who are mentally challenged, people who have disabilities, people who are addicts. Now, no doubt, you living down here, you've met all of the same type of people, and you've no doubt learned too that, especially in relating to your own personal situation, that there are lots of people out there who have mental health problems who don't even know about it, aren't even aware of it, or if they do, they don't understand what it is. Now, relate that to your filmmaking. Is that what you're trying to bring out as far as awareness is concerned?
So you're absolutely right, Dan. One of the most important mission now, even that I've won this Courage Award, is to be an advocate for mental health. And so one of the things that we have to be aware of as a society is we have to open a dialogue on mental health. It is so important, I cannot stress. Look at the incidents that are going on in the world, the Sandy Hook shooting, for example.
Well, yes,
these are two individuals, right?
Yes, we did a show on that. Yes.
Two boys that were probably mentally ill.
Yeah.
They didn't even know it, and they took it to that level. So the key here is to start to have a dialogue, so that because we in society, we fear what we don't understand. If we don't understand mental illness, we fear it, we back off from it, and so what happens? We don't really educate anybody.
Right.
So it's very, very important. And one of the things, I'll give you another example, the Hollywoodization of mental illness, for example. Look at there's tons of films that use mental illness in the wrong context. They miseducate. For example, Hollywood films that take a hold.
Sensationalize it. Like, for example, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Exactly.
Was an example of sensationalizing those who are mentally ill.
Oh, I got it. So Psycho, the Alfred Hitchcock movie.
There's another one, yeah. Okay.
People on the streets, when they first thing what do we learn from the Psycho movie? That people with a mental illness are violent. They will kill you because the shower scene, right?
Yeah.
And automatically you're labeled as when people see me, if they recognize who I am through this Courage win. Actually, I should be honest. I was at McDonald's the other day, and I noticed that the two people behind the counter, they were looking at me. They were working there, and they were just staring at me. And I thought, did these guys see me in the paper? Why are they looking at me? And then they were talking to each other, and she looked at me again, and I could tell it was recognition, the look of recognition. Oh, I know who you are. So she turned away and she went, Psycho.
Oh my God.
And I thought,
to be kidding.
she labeled me as a psycho from the ad. That's how she categorized and labeled me. So she remembered me as the guy who had the mental illness and said psycho. Automatically, she's already put this tag on me that says I'm a murderer, I'm violent, and and I can't be trusted. Mentally ill people are among the most gentle people that you'll ever meet. And so that stigma in itself it's all erroneous. It's misinformation.
It's that is the stigma that is attached to mental illness, and as you say, it's a very broad category. It's you touched on the Sandy Hook massacre. They're happening all the time, more frequently all the time. We read about people with guns that are that are
What about
flipping out.
the Greyhound beheading story? That guy who beheaded someone in the Greyhound bus?
Yes.
They didn't put that into context. All they said was this guy murdered this guy. And what does that create? It creates fear again. And when someone sees me and goes, oh, he's schizophrenic, he's scary, stay away from him. He might, So it's the same thing. We have to, we're fighting against the mainstream media in some way because they're educating in a way that is untruthful. And so it's important, and that's why I go to schools and I talk to kids and I try to make them understand that this is what mental illness is about. Don't look at these the Hollywoodization of mental illness. Look at the facts. And also, one of the other important messages is I try to spread is that we are all potential. If you look at water, and water is potential. You take it, you put it into the pot, you boil it, and next thing you know, you got soup. It's potential. We're the same. If you look at anything on a quantum scale, we are all atoms moving very quickly. Why are we atoms that are moving very quickly? Because we're potential, right?
Yes.
So this is what I tell the kids: we are all potential. You can be anything you want, and this is why. And so when they grab onto that, I think they understand.
So this is what you're doing now. We're going to talk a little bit about this now because of your making films now and trying to bring more awareness to the mental health issues, especially. I mean, you just have to take a walk down Hastings Street. You can see here there are a lot of people that are lost. They're out of it. They need help. They've got problems. Of course, this is what we're trying to bring attention to on the show today with regards to what Mr. Brar brought out is awareness. Now, you say you've been doing speaking engagements at high schools and universities, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And this is, of course, in connection with your film work. So your message to these kids is what?
Well, we have to open a dialogue so that we can talk about mental illness. And this is so important because if we don't talk about it, how are we going to understand what's going on?
Yeah.
And so this is a really, really, really important thing. And that's why I'm on this mission of wanting to educate people about mental illness. And one of the things that we could do is, for example, police officers need sensitivity training. When I was down here, I can't tell you how many times I was pushed, hurt, punched, kicked, got a knee in my back, just because I lived in this neighborhood and I raised my voice to an officer. Immediately, I was treated like I was a criminal. Right. Now, interestingly, about a month or 2 months ago, I had a similar incident happen. You said I live in the downtown east side, but I actually live right at the perimeter. So I live at near Clark, where sort of it ends. Anyway, we had an incident happen, so I called the police. They came over, and instead of treating me like that criminal, they respected me. They came in to my apartment and said, "Oh, hello, Mr. Fiore, we'd like to..." And they treated me like a human being. And so I got to see the way that you get treated on this end of the spectrum as a mentally ill person or drug addict in the downtown east side and as a productive member of society. So one of the things that we have to do is we have to train police to be sensitive with people that are mentally ill. They have to recognize the warning signs of someone that has a mental illness, because then they won't be just randomly shooting people. Because then why aren't we teaching people, hey, what do you do when you see somebody that looks confused or somebody that's kind of talking to themselves? We don't. What do? We run away from that person. We leave them in their corner and we go to the other side of the subway track because we don't want anything to do with that guy. But really, as a society, we should be teaching people, okay, so if you see someone talking to themselves, that might be a sign that they're mentally ill. If we see somebody, confused or screaming or talking, that could be another sign. What do we do? So in our society, instead of fearing that, we should be trying to connect with that so that next Sandy Hook massacre doesn't happen, because we see a kid and he's exhibiting some kind of warning sign, and then we go to him and we give them attention, and next thing you know, they're not doing the same thing. They're now realizing that we have to educate people on what is going on.
Yeah, you got me worried now because I talk to myself all the time. But I was going to mention something on that. It's interesting you mentioned how the police have this stigma as well in dealing with certain cases involving, well, it's hard for the police to differentiate between just a violent crime and a person who's got a mental problem. But in Surrey now, it's interesting, they've set up a car, it's called Car 57. And they've assigned a new liaison officer. Her name is Taylor Quee. I don't know if you've heard about this program,
No.
but she now rides in Car 57, and with a regular police officer, and she deals strictly with calls dealing with the mentally ill. Now, this was brought on because of thousands of calls. I was reading this, I found this interesting. Thousands of calls coming into, in particular, the Surrey detachment there, and they gave the case of this one elderly woman who was mentally ill. She couldn't deal with just regular tasks at home, and got so frustrated she'd be calling 911, and she called it so many times, and the police were going and finding out that she couldn't turn the tap on or something of that nature.
I remember that, yeah.
So they assigned this officer and a special car for dealing with these cases. It's relieved the police force there of all these nuisance calls, and also removed the stigma so that when a call comes in, they know what they're dealing with. So
that's an excellent program.
It's an excellent program, and it's one way. I mean, we're talking about positive ways of dealing with these issues on this show, and this is one way they could certainly expand on this.
That makes me feel hopeful, Dan. That's great.
Yeah, it's good to hear stuff like that.
Absolutely.
It shows that people are listening.
Yeah.
You know, you going out and speaking to the kids, especially educating the young people. Now we know we've heard also, we're talking about the news of all these massacres in the States, and you know, also we've had problems with suicides, young people committing suicides. We had Amanda Todd there, that sad case of that Coquitlam teen. She was only 15 years old. Social media, of course, we know is a big problem, and kids are sucked into this, and there are lots of evil people out there preying on these young people. So what you're doing there by going out and speaking to these kids is a tremendous educational tool in more ways than one. Would you not agree?
I agree totally with you, Dan. It's a very important thing, and yeah, I mean, interestingly, like the way that it happened was at one point I thought, I'm going to start emailing high schools and see if they're interested in my documentaries.
Yeah.
And when I started emailing high schools, instead of increasing my sales, I got teachers saying, "Hey, would you come out and talk to my kids? Because you're a great example of someone with a disability that's actually having a successful life." And so part of that is to also go there and say, "Look, we're not limited by mental illness. In fact, if you were to take a real close look at some of the people that are very successful in the world right now, they all have mental illness. Jim Carrey, Robin Williams. You can go on and on and on."
Yeah, we did a show on diabetes, and that alone opened my eyes as to how many people behind the scenes are dealing with physical or mental ailments that are a daily routine for them, and yet the show must go on. So that's a really interesting point. But talking to these kids, to get back on that subject, we can see the way that again, a stigma that's attached to a mental health problem. When a person experiences, say, for example, anxiety is a mental illness because it can become very intense. A person can feel totally lost and abandoned, don't understand what's happening to them, as you experienced, and while they're trying to figure this all out, their peers, the people that they look to for friendship and acceptance, are at the same time calling them, like in Amanda Todd's case, or that or the girl from Nova Scotia, Rehtaeh Parsons, who also just committed suicide. So another 17-year-old. They were calling her a slut, and the boys were lining up for sex, and this girl got raped. So this is where the kids need to be educated as to how to deal with these issues
Very
as well.
Very important. I agree.
Especially the younger, the better. So this is.
It's a different world, Dan, than when we grew up. So now that there's social media, bullying can go beyond what we experienced. Now people can be bullied online. And now we can take someone's video and put it online and embarrass them. But the thing is, we're living in it's an intelligence revolution. We're very close to the cusp of being able to create computers that are more intelligent than humans. So this is a shame, because we have the capacity to communicate and eradicate all of this silliness just by educating and saying, look, if you have an issue, turn to your camera to express your pain. Don't turn to drugs. Don't turn to suicide. Make a message, put it out there and say, look, hey, this is who I am. And so that's what we have to kind of encourage kids to do.
Yeah, to use social media for positive change.
Exactly.
We haven't got much time left, but we wanted to get you to talk about your new film. It's called The 100 Block, which is, I understand, is coming out in June.
It is. So June 7th at the Carnegie Theatre, we're going to be showing The 100 Block.
Carnegie Theatre is located on Hastings here?
Yeah, Hastings in Maine, right there.
Okay.
At the corner, the big library. The film is about survival sex trade, and in the film I was fortunate to have interviewed 9 survival sex trade workers. They're all females, and this is a follow-up film to 10 City Blocks. In 2011 I did one called 10 City Blocks, and it was about the survival sex trade. And in that film it was basically a cautionary tale. I portrayed the women as victims, and I let them tell their bad date stories. So one after another you hear all the bad dates, and so I use that in my guest speaking, and the kids are just, they're glued to it, because these are real people, and this is where you're going to end up if you keep fooling around with drugs and coming down here. So now this time with the 100 Block, I got deeper and deeper, and I found out who these people, so the 9 women, I find out who they are, why they're there, how they plan to exit the sex trade. So we get more involved. And also very fortunate to have interviewed Dr. Gabor Mate,